It's a problem because it's a lifelong illness, and I don't want to call it illness. It's a lifelong disorder, and it has far-reaching effects. So there are few, but the effects for those few few children who may be afflicted are multiplied by the effects of the disorder. And number one I could mention, this is from what I've observed and from what I've also gone through. These children tend to be, they have functional challenges, and so they tend to be, because of the socializing problems, they are isolated. They are isolated, they isolate themselves, but also the children around them may isolate them because they don't understand why they behave the way they do. They have communication problems, they have challenges with school performance because they may have challenges again with communication. They may have co-occurring learning disorders. And they're generally, the society may not understand them and why they behave the way they do.
They're not understood. So they're different?
They're different. I could say the word is they're different. And so also their families are affected because one, because of the fact that, and we're going to discuss the care of these children, it is costly. It is a heavy burden to the parent. It's a heavy burden to, I mean, Mr. Paul.
Maybe to understand a bit about the costs. How expensive? Why is it costly? What exactly goes into taking care of a child with autism?
Yeah, doctor, according to what makes it expensive, it's a multidisciplinary team. A mother will need several therapists on board, of which each therapist is taking a session of at least 1 hour and 30 minutes per day, of which the therapist to come home will ask you something to refund everything. We don't have a clear tools we are using. Always, every day you assess a child and come up, let's get this, let's get this. There are also on restrictions, supervision. It becomes an expense to the family. Remember, they're always hyper autistic children. So a mother is always supervising. So it becomes a very expensive process.
Okay, so
schools,
expensive because of calling very many specialists?
Specialists involved. Schools, we need very many schools, special schools, whereby you can take to a specific school. The teacher must understand the child. It's not a matter of taking to any school. They should be training. Remember, they have attention deficit. They have also other challenges. From also my experience, what is now a concern right now as autism? Doctor, I'm seeing most of single parents. You see a single parent, he's bringing to you the mother, and you ask where the dad is not concerned. Most especially look at talking, and the mother will say, for us we did to talk. That's what the dad is saying. But in an actual sense, it's autism. So there's a big concern.
So like it breaks families?
Yeah, it has broken some families.
Okay.
Yeah, also what the doctor talked about, there are also some autistic children, they could be having seizures. They go also certain behavior challenges. They are depressed. There's anxiety. Depression can affect the mother, can affect the parents, also the child. This failure to communicate with the siblings. That kind of isolation, when the child is isolated, so it also affects us. Just talk about the academic performance, the social skills, so that it becomes a big concern as an autistic for autism.
Yeah, and in addition to what he mentions, because it's a lifelong thing, at every stage of development of this child, there are new challenges. So this is a child, but then he's going to become an adolescent. He's going to become a man, for example. And then there's the care. There's care when no one is directly responsible for him. Say the parents have passed away. What's going to happen to this adult with autism? Is he going to get married? Is he going to have children? Is he going to be able to support himself? So it's a process, and
it's a process. But do they grow to become adults?
Yes, they do. I mean, autism doesn't kill.
It doesn't kill, yeah? Yeah, because that's the question people have to at least first clear in their minds. But now, so in adulthood, so in children, there'll be problems with development, language and the likes. So what about in adults? Do these problems carry on into adulthood?
Yes, the isolation.
Yeah, doctor, they do carry to adulthood. And now, when not intervened early, they'll have these challenges, like the cognition challenges, the attention, they carry on. Now, like an adult, at my 18 years plus, I'm expected to be independent. But shall I achieve that independence? Shall I go through school? Shall I do business? Shall I earn a living? So shall we there be production or work in the future? So it should become a concern to the country and to the parents.
And then again, these children tend to have potential. a lot of potential that is unexplored because nobody knows how to explore it. Some of the people in history who are geniuses were actually having the autism disorder, but nobody, so much of our education system doesn't harness these gifts. If I could, they are really gifts, and so they're just sort of like floating in air. There's a lot of uncertainty. Where does my child go? Like for me, a long time I wondered, what happens when I leave this earth? What is going to happen to my boy? Yes.
Like
Will people understand him? Yes, as a mother, as a parent, what's going to happen to my child? Are people going to isolate him? Are people going to care for him when I've gone?
I think are they so dependent on other people that they can't do anything for themselves?
To a degree. Autism is a spectrum. Some have quite severe challenges, some are not so severe. So it depends on where the child is lying. But in general, as a mother, you want your child to be loved by everyone else. And so when people distance themselves from your child, it hurts. And people have been insensitive, have made so many comments.
They call different names.
They call your child names, and as a mother, it hurts. So it's painful.
So a lot of community misunderstanding on what a child with autism goes through. It can be quite challenging if a child has certain, for example, a learning deficit, and they take longer to learn, and then if you have an impatient teacher or someone, an adult, they'll think the child is just being stupid or is being stubborn, refusing to learn. Yes, and beating the child. Yet the child genuinely has a problem, which is called autism. So we're bringing to you these challenges, these real challenges, to help you realize that certain diseases may contribute to your child's abnormal behavior. So you might want to pay close attention. After the break, we'll come to understand how you can recognize your child may be having autism. Are there early signs to tell that the child has autism, and what can be done to correct or prevent it from progressing? More of that coming after the break. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
You are watching the Doctalk Show.
Patriotism is a feeling of love, devotion, and the willingness to sacrifice for one's country.
I say no to corruption because I put my country first. I choose peace over violence because I put my country first.
Patriotic, Uganda first. This message is brought to you by the National Secretariat for Patriotism Co Uganda, Office of the President.
You are watching the Doctalk Show.
Raising a child with autism is quite a difficult task, and Dr. Nerima will share with us her experience of how it has impacted on her life. Has it changed her in any way? What lessons has she learned? What advice does she have to give mothers and fathers of children who have autism? So maybe Dr. Nerima, you could share with us your story. How has this experience, it changed you? Has it impacted you in any way?
Okay, so thank you. It has been one of the greatest challenges I have ever experienced. Even as one would think that because I'm trained, it should be. It should be a walk
doctor, and you kind of understand these
but
things.
It is not. I'm a mother first and foremost, and so my earliest emotions were shock and.
Like when the doctor said your child has autism?
Even before he decided, even before he made the diagnosis, I had my suspicions, and it didn't help that I was trained. So I kind of knew. I was hoping for maybe he's going to say no, he will go. That's what my hope as a mother. But when I found out, I sat and I'm thinking, what next? What do I do? There's all these thoughts running through your mind, and then you grieve. You grieve the child you thought you had, and then now you're faced with a new child. You can't put him back in your womb. That come back. Let's retake this birth.
But why did you grieve? Like what? It's not like the child has died.
He didn't die, but
yes.
the image I had of what he should be, because every mother that gets pregnant, you have these hopes. I'm going to give birth to a bouncing baby boy. He's going to be like this. He's going to grow up and become, I don't know. When I was pregnant, I wanted my child to be a chef. Because I wanted a child who could cook.
I think you love cooking, yes?
No, I like good food. And so I thought, okay, my child is going to be a chef. And then the doctor tells me, okay, he has this problem and this problem.
So it's
all
like
those
so it's almost assurance that if you have autism, certain things will never happen? Is it?
They may not happen. They may happen. They may. You may struggle. It's not a war. It's not. It's not a. It's not a walkover. You're going to have to be deliberate about many things. So I cried a lot. I struggled a lot. I also dealt with the stares, the comments from the public. Your child is throwing a tantrum, and then people pass and say, "Oh, this mother spoils her child." But no one is understanding that you can't communicate with your child.
Okay.
Amidst all this, I'm a mother of other children. I'm working. I'm a wife. So you have to integrate this child. Sorry, not this child, but the challenges around this child with life. I mean, life doesn't stop.
Okay.
And so,
but now specifically, like what things had to change in your life that was different when you looked after your first child?
Okay. But the biggest thing that had to change was my mindset. I needed to let go of what I thought it should be and focus on what I have and how I can make it better. So I needed to let go of my dreams. Not my dreams. I don't want to say my dreams, but I just had to change my mindset and get over this defeatist mindset that, oh, my child, this is going to happen. I had to focus on, okay, this is the issue. Let's move forward. So I learned how to be patient. I learned how to multitask a little bit more than women you should do. And then I had to raise my other children, and it was difficult because balancing the care. I used to joke that he was 2 in 1 because the amount of care he needed was a lot.
It was much more.
Yes. And then the other children are also wondering what is different about my brother.
Why does this child getting more attention?
Why is he rolling on the ground? What do we do, mommy?
Okay. So it's a bit challenging as a parent. So, Mr. Paul, as an expert in the treating autism, children with autism, what are some of the common challenges? Not signs, not yet, but some of the challenges that you see the families face. Yes, challenges that they're going through. And
Doctor, the first challenge is the expenses. It's the expenses to parents. Breaking the information to the parent that your child is autistic is a big challenge. Most parents are in denial because most parents come to us when they want their children to talk. The first sign they see is language and communication. So the mother will come, doctor has given me your contact. My child is at 3 years, he's not talking. So you say, man, I want to talk, my child to talk. Yet there are other problems the child is going through. So for you to convince this mother to believe that there's beyond talking is a challenge. Another challenge is there are many single mothers. It has broken a lot of families, as discussed earlier. Yes, doctor. So those are the major challenges I'm facing. And also currently, where to get treatment.
Is there treatment anyway?
No, okay, the interventions.
Where to get the help?
The treatment is fragmented.
Yes.
For speech, go to the other side. They'll tell you, go to so and so. For language, it's not.
For special therapy.
It's not, it's not in one place.
So the parents kind of like give up. They're like, anyway, so they have so many people to see.
Yeah, they give up. We have few centers, of which even those few centers, they look at children below 5 years, 6 years. When you grow up, you're in 10 years plus, you don't have centers caring for you. There are less centers in Uganda. And most centers which we have, they are so private. They're so private for private interventions.
And I'm imagining, is this the reason why some children are like abandoned?
Yes, they're abandoned. I personally, I've got a client who called me and said, my child is autistic, but I've given up. 6 months down the road, they are doing speech therapy. But the child had other challenges, like the signs and symptoms. He had issues with his cognition skills, the way his concentration, attention, problem solving was impaired. He had issues with his sensory aspects, the hearing. This is the child who could put hands on the ear. I tried to explain to the mother that there's a problem here. He had issues with textures. He could dislike certain foods. He could dislike certain clothes. I tried to explain to the mother, this is a problem, but she couldn't really believe. The same parents, these children also have issues with behavior. Tantrums. Sometimes they use tantrums as a way of communication. He will fall down, start crying as a way to communicate. But mothers don't see that they are communicating, maybe in need of something. You see them with self-care activities. They do poop on themselves. They are always a child of 4 years to be in a pamper is a big concern. So like even doctor can explain to her how whether the child could go through that self-care activities. When you tell the mother that no, at 4 years, a child is not meant to do this, she will not accept. She will say, I want my child to talk.
So what we mentioned is what is obvious. What is obvious? What is important? We need to help parents manage their expectations.
It's
Because
expectations
6
of
months
the parents which have to slow
expecting
down.
your child to speak is a bit expecting too much. I think what is lacking is from the get-go, this counseling. Tell the mother that this is what is expected. This is what's going to happen. This is what we should do. So the mothers also so I don't even want to say mothers. Let's say parents, because even the fathers are involved.
And other caretakers.
Yes, and
The father shouldn't abandon
the
father
family.
shouldn't abandon the mother, but the mother shouldn't abandon the child or the father for that matter. Nobody should give up. These children, there's hope.
You just have
There's
to
a lot
be
of hope.
patient.
You have to
with
be
the child.
patient. My child has made tremendous progress. You know. Yes,
What
tremendous
progress has happened?
He speaks. He's very jolly. He's
How old
very
is he
friendly.
now?
He's 7.5 years.
Okay.
He communicates with me. I'm a happy mom. I communicate with my son. I'm not saying that he's achieved what he should, but he's making progress. And that's for me what's important. So I just need to say that to mothers and fathers, that there's hope. You just have to stay the process and move along with it. Yeah. And there's ways you can tweak your environment of the child to make it work for you.
Yeah, very, very a powerful message there from Dr. Nerema, who is a parent of a child with autism and also a practicing pediatrician. Must be a unique position for you, being a doctor and also being a parent. But I think it puts you at a position where you can also advise parents who are facing the same problem not to give up on their children.
Yeah.
Yes. So anyway, just quickly as we go for the break, maybe we shall discuss after the break what exactly, how parents can tell signs that the children may be autistic and what can be done. We shall do that after the break. If you have any questions regarding autism, I know it's it's still a topic that a few people may not properly understand, but basically the child's brain has certain, I think some processes do not work as well, so they'll be different from other children. That will be the fact, and we have to be very patient with them as they go through their growth and development to become adults. I think that's part of the main message.
That's really the main message.
Okay,
Yeah.
so after the break we'll come back to understand some signs and symptoms, and what's most important is the condition treatable. More of this coming after the break.
The Ministry of Health informs the general public that during this COVID-19 pandemic, we should not forget to take our children for immunization. Parents and caregivers are reminded that the immunization services are still accessible at all government health facilities. Please take your child for immunization on time. All vaccines are safe, effective, and free. Remember to observe the COVID-19 prevention measures as you go for immunization services. Wear a mask properly, covering your mouth and nose. Wash your hands regularly with soap and clean water or use an alcohol-based sanitizer. Maintain a physical distance of at least 2 meters from others and avoid crowds. This message is from the Ministry of Health with support from partners.
You are watching the Doctalk Show.
It's a new day. Let's make some noise with our new toys. 'Cause it's so perfect if you have a parade. Oh, oh, oh. 'Cause we just love to play.
You are watching the Doctalk show.
Autism has significant impact on a parent's life, and not just a parent's life, an impact on their families, their brothers and sisters, the people, relatives, or other social workers who interact with the child and the child's family. So that said, it's always important to screen and identify these children and to take them to see the appropriate specialists who can treat them. We want to know how exactly this can be done. Are there signs and symptoms? Maybe Dr. Nerima, you can tell us more about this.
Yeah.
How can parents know at an early stage? I believe when you identify it early, it can be corrected early. How can this be corrected? How can these children be identified?
So there are really very clear signs when a child is growing, because development doesn't start at one point in time that now we start talking. There are background processes. So for example, for language development, around the age of 2 to 4 months, a child begins to coo and make those cooing sounds with the mother. At that point, the child must be making those sounds. Like I mentioned, my son wasn't making them.
And
At
you
the
can
age between,
recognize, I think, the mother.
that is face recognition. That is more of a social recognition of the mother. Some may not. They may be oblivious of the mother. But then when the child is about 6 to 7 months, they are not making those babbling sounds like ma, ma, one syllable sound. They don't make eye contact like I mentioned, or they have poor eye contact. And then by 1 year, surely, they must have made some. The child, a child without autism or who is developing normally should be able to make sounds that are reflective of some language development. So, for example, if a child isn't pointing to an object and saying, pointing to something that they want, what we call past pointing, by 1.5 years, 18 months, that's a red flag. And the red flags are things like you need to see somebody quickly. If the child tends to not want to play with peers around the age of maybe when they're not socialized, they don't seem to recognize another child. That's a red flag. But in general, even as we go to other signs, in general, every mother, every parent must take their child for screening for every child, because some signs can be picked early. They shouldn't wait to see the red flags. Screening is part of general, care for a child. Let's say at the visit for 9 months at the measles vaccination point, these children must be screened because there are early signs that can be picked up, and this child can be followed up.
Okay, so some questions about screening, yes, but yes.
About as Doctor said about the screening process, it's like there should be a general screening, as she has commented, whenever you are visiting your doctor.
But firstly, who screens is a question now. Because I think when a child is sick, every parent will take them to the hospital. But who screens for autism now?
Now, who screens for autism? Now, the pediatrician has spotted the red flags. Now, there's what we call an assessment. We do a detailed assessment. You assess the areas of weakness. So here we have the occupational therapist, we have the speech and language therapist, we have the child psychiatrist, we have the neuropediatricians, also the pediatricians.
All those do participate
That's
in
the multidisciplinary team. They do the screen. Now, an occupational therapist like me, we shall look at the cognition skills. We shall look at the sensory integration. So in other words, we shall look at the child in the 6 areas. We shall look at the child in the activities of daily living, the self-care, how the child is doing the self-care. We shall look at the child in the leisure activities. That's why we are talking about the social aspect, how the child is playing with others, how is the team making pieces, is he interacting, the behavior ways, how is he showing tantrums, when he's demanding something, how is the child going to ask for juice from mommy. Won't he just cry? There are babies even who cry from the sitting room, and you can't tell what the baby is really interested in. So, in that, an occupational therapist will help you to know such thing in that kind of area. And also, you look at production. Dr. Naima has told us the child is 7 years and a half. At 7 years and a half, he's going to school going, is a school-going child. How is he performing in class? We shall look at that area of angle. Then also, in the other angle of the aspect, we look at the psychosocial aspect. We start treatment with the parents. As Dr. Nema said, she went through a lot. So how is she counseled? How is she supported so that she can be able to foot the bills of the medical intervention? Most common parents...
That's one of the That's you're describing the roles as an occupational
As an
therapist.
occupational therapist and the
Yes.
concern.
But I think you gave the idea that the child will be seen by different other specialists,
Yes.
including a
But you're screening.
psychiatrist.
So at the screen, after screening, if I could add, after screening, then the multidisciplinary team comes on board because, like we mentioned, there are challenges in many different functions, and each therapist has a function to play. With the pediatrician or the child psychiatrist or the primary caregiver being doing the assessment, whoever does the assessment then refers the child to where they need to go. If it's speech, if it is a speech therapist, if it's a occupational therapist, does a lot with daily living and what he has mentioned, improving functionality of the child. Yeah. Then we will have a big component of education, and that is where we have a big challenge in Uganda.
In education, like the teachers.
How do you teach these children? They are teachers and they are schools, but are they accessible to everyone? There are some are very costly.
Maybe that's the question. So how do you teach a child with autism?
Okay, now those are the special needs teachers,
The
and they are
specialists,
trained
that's
to
the
teach
rehabilitation
these
team.
children.
So they need special.
They need special training
teachers.
over and above the usual training for education. You understand?
And Doctor, to supplement also on that, about the special training, the severity is on a spectrum. There's mild and severe autism cases. So now if the child is not so severe, you can rehabilitate. This team can work on the communication. This team can work on the functional skills. And the child can go into inclusive education. Personally, I have clients who are going through inclusive what? Education. So, education, yes, where you're going through normal P1, P2, P3. Yes, you are attained as a normal child. So it depends on this team.
So it depends. If the child has a very severe form, they will need.
So
Yeah, there are ones who are non-verbal, there are others who are verbal, and you can't do anything on communication apart from using what? Gestures. But take for example, you know, take a child to school who can tell that I want to do self-care, I want to do susu, I want to do poo-poo. So with time is trained. When they are trained, we include them into inclusive education. Yeah, that's the rehabilitation sector.
yeah, and then there are those who can join inclusive schools who may be on the spectrum able to, but then we have those who may have intellectual disability and they really cannot study they really can't pick up some of these things, and they are there, and these can be helped in vocations and skills building. So you understand, the school has got to be versatile to see where can we help the child, because at the end of the day this child has to get into a point. And this afternoon I bought crafts from children in a school in Naguru where they're making these beautiful mats, placemats. And the mat was beautiful, and the child is not going to class and study as we know it, but he's able to do
But
something.
they can do something.
yeah.
And they can sell these things
That's
and
part
look
of
after
the
themselves.
occupation training.
It's
So
not
that
really, it's more
special.
vocational.
Independence,
skills
yeah.
building, because maybe the classroom setting, learning in the class has been difficult.
So do you feel the current education system is supporting children with autism?
Currently, to me as a therapist, there is a challenge with that, because even most schools don't have therapists to help these children to acquire the skills. As Doctor has talked about vocational training skills. So if a school doesn't have a therapist, either an occupational therapist, a speech therapist, the child will not be helped.
And will always be
It will be
underperforming in school.
underperformance.
So what should the government do? What should they change now that we realize this problem is growing?
So the schools exist, but they're mostly private and they cost differently. And like we mentioned, there are costs in the background that we don't know that this child, the parents incur. So I think the government needs to have a setup where there's inclusion. There's inclusion, but with necessary separation if there's need to separate the children who need different sort of skills building. And then there is inclusion. So then this should be across the board. This should be standardized in all schools, and this will help these children. One, when they grow with the rest, when they are in inclusive schools, they pick up skills from the other children, like socialization and what. Okay. But then for those that may not be able to get that far, they have also vocations that they can build. But this should be across the board so that everybody can benefit. Oh. Yeah, and then the fathers just need to know that something can be done. Something can be done, but we just need to change the way we approach these children. We just need to change our expectations and our thinking, and work with what you have, Work with what you have. Yes.
And not to lose
Also
hope.
to have a team of therapists in these nursery schools. it can be a solution also. We can have occupational therapists as part of the staff in the nursery setting. We can
And I
have
imagine also increasing the number of therapists.
Yes.
Because maybe the problem
and
is there are very
unfortunately,
few therapists in the
yeah,
country.
and a few training institutions, yeah. Like for occupational therapists, they're only trained from Lago paramedical schools.
And
So
they should be in the government structure. Just like teachers and head teachers, they should be in the government structure. The government structure does have special needs teachers, but I found that a majority focus on hearing and speech impairment, like hearing and visual impairment, you know. And that has been really developed in Uganda. There's Braille, they do exams, but then for neurodevelopmental disorders like autism, they need to be structured within and trained even during practice as they teach. They train, how do you identify? Because even teachers can screen. They can screen and flag a child and refer. They're part of the team.
And also the other
Interesting.
most hospitals don't have therapists.
Okay, so it's quite a complex matter, but I think we get the gist of the issue. There are obvious deficiencies in some areas that are meant to support parents and children with autism. Issues, gaps in education, gaps in healthcare, gaps in the social supports of the children, if they have people to help with their vocational skills training. All these are gaps that need to be improved if we are to eventually kick autism. So thank you very much, Dr. Nerima and Mr. Paul. We'll see you next time on the Doctalk show. If you have any questions regarding autism, please forward it to our social media platforms. I was ready to receive and to answer them. For now, we wish you, we'll see you next time on the Doctalk show.
The Doctalk show.
Bueno, yaba no mojo, yaba no wishi. I don't know. If it is a boy, I'm going to be calling Hakatabas. The garo ret nyana naza kumani ming. Otio, ha, can't take anything grave. Ay. Riama katutumto. Ay. That's one that I'm with you. What's your? You have no agenda. Sleep like a baby at home. Yeah. Thank you.
Katoto. Hold on. What about immunization?
No. Nga. Immunization bossy. Into Sakuchikoro wanji.
Katoto, your son is a citizen of Uganda now. Atogo no mwana witu. Our government has assured that all these essential vaccines, they are free.
You mean immunization is free?
Yes, so we have made sure that there are several health center units where you can take Katabazi and he gets essential vaccines. Before Katabazi reaches the age of 13, he will need to receive